It's kind of a sad video here. This is the end of my Naomi gun cabinet project. I figured I should put a final video up. I disassembled it a while ago. The story is I took my gun parts to a friend's house that has a working setup. I found that one of my gun boards, the player 1 side worked, the player 2 side would not calibrate. The other gun board, neither side would calibrate. One of my guns worked perfect. The other gun seemed to work, although it was shooting about an inch or two below where you would aim. We didn't really do too much calibration on it, so that might have just been something we could have fixed with some calibration. I then took those home. I didn't label them like an idiot. So I get home and here I've still got 2 gun boards and a pair of guns, and I didn't know which one was the one that worked. So pretty easy to figure it out, I thought. I'll just put it in the machine. And I know that one gun board, player 1 should work, and the other one, neither should work. So I put the stuff back in the cabinet, and I was still having all kinds of problems, and it wasn't behaving properly. And so I figured maybe I've got a wiring issue somewhere. It's just something simple that I miswired. And then, as I was testing, Lupin the Shooting game actually has, when you enter the high score, when you enter your name, it looks like a typewriter, and you aim the gun at the keys to type your name. When I was doing that, I noticed that the gun would track and then freeze, and then it would track and then freeze. And I thought, that's not right. So after I just entered 3 random initials and it went back to the demo, the attract mode, it was freezing also. So at that point, I started a game, and I think it probably shows it in one of my videos. When you start a game, some Japanese text goes across the screen, white font on a black background. That was freezing. So at that point, I checked my 5 volts. My 5 volts was dead on, and then I just shut everything off. So I think what might have been part of my problem is that I might have a problem with my Naomi. So it's a little bit of a mess in here, but this top Naomi is the one that has the original House of the Dead 2 board, and then it has dual BIOS. It has the original House of the Dead 2 BIOS soldered directly to the board without a socket. And then it has a Japanese H BIOS soldered to the top of that BIOS. Pin 11 of each BIOS is lifted, and then a wire goes from each pin 11 on the 2 BIOS, and the hole that pin 11 usually goes into a switch right here, but on the other side of this Naomi. So I can switch between which BIOS I use. There's also a 330 ohm resistor in line. I used to have pictures on my website, but my ISP said, we don't want to host websites for free anymore, and I just never bothered moving my content anywhere. But yeah, I don't know if, it's been working fine. It just developed this problem that I noticed when I plugged everything back in and tried to test. I did not see any freezing before. So I don't know if when I took the guns and gun boards out, if when I plugged them back in I didn't plug them in enough, or my fear is that it might be the fan either on the motherboard or the fan on the case that might be failing on the Naomi, which is causing it to overheat, which is causing it to freeze, which is not good. So, I'm not going to blame that on the dual BIOS hack. I'm not going to blame that on my gun cabinet. I'm just going to say that It might be the fan failing. They do over time. So at that point I was just kind of disgusted, and I just started taking it all apart. My gun setup, not the Naomi. I have not taken that Naomi apart. What I need to do is separate the plastic shell, plug it in, and make sure both fans are actually turning as the first step in trying to determine what's going on. Like I said, I measured the 5 volts. It was fine. I did not measure 3.3 volts. That could be another issue, that the power supply that I was using, original House of the Dead 2 power supply, that 3.3 volts was dropping. I don't know. I just, at that point I just kind of got fed up. I'm like, okay, I've just spent way too much time on this project. It should work if I had working parts. But, half the project was trying to determine for sure if I had working parts or not. And I did determine at my friend's house that some of my parts were working, some were partial working, some were not working. And at that point I didn't want to spend any more money trying to replace guns or gun hoses, trying to get the guns going, or buy more gun boards to try and get it going. I just decided, okay, I've had enough of this project. And what I did was I sold my friend both gun boards, both guns, a spare sensor I had that I forgot to test when I was at his place, the IR emitters that go around the monitor. So basically he's got a bunch of spare parts. And then I sold him the pedestal that the guns go in. I gave the TV to a friend of mine, and I sold the TV stand on Craigslist. So that's the sad end of that project.